Now we're going to move on to session 9.2, which is over many-to-many relationships. As you recall, a one-to-many relationship, abbreviated as 1:M, exists between two tables when each record in the primary table matches 0, 1, or more records in the related table, and when each record in the related table matches at most one record in the primary table. And we've seen examples of this before. Now we're going to start looking at many-to-many relationships. And when you have many-to-many relationships, and as we have this abbreviated as capital M colon capital N, when you have these many-to-many relationships between two tables, you must create a third table known as a relationship table and form one-to-many relationships between the two original primary tables and the relationship table. So let's go ahead and jump into session 9.2 of tutorial 9, and we'll start working with our many-to-many relationships. Now, similar to the way we did it before, where we defined a one-to-one relationships, we defined the many-to-many and one-to-one relationships in the relationships window here in Access. So let's go ahead and take a look at these steps to define a many-to-many relationship between our billing table and our employee tables. And we'll look at the 8 steps we have here. Here you can see in this diagram that we are going to define the one-to-many relationship between our billing table and our treatment table. And we're going to do our one-to-many relationship between the treatment table and the employee table. And here's those remaining steps that we're going to be performing. And once we're completed, you can see that we have our one-to-many relationships being represented with the number 1 and our infinity sign for the many. So let's go ahead and get back into our database and start working on defining our many-to-many relationships between our billing and employee tables. Now that we're back in our health database, let's go ahead and click the Database Tools tab there. Then we're going to go to our Relationships and click the Relationships button. As you see in the Relationships window here, we already have some relationships that are defined between some of our tables. Let's go now onto the Design tab in our Relationships group, and let's click on the Show Table button to open our Show Table dialog box. Let's double click our table treatment to add that, and let's go ahead and add our billing contact table to add the billing contact field to the relationships window. And lastly, let's double click on the employee table here to add the employee table field list to the relationships window. And let's go ahead and close that now that we have all of our tables that we want to work with there. Let's go ahead and drag the bottom of our field list down so we can see all the field names. That looks pretty good. Now let's rearrange our window to match that of figure 9-14 to rearrange those that we just added. So let's go ahead and do that now. We'll put treatment over here. And let's put employee down here. And we'll move billing contact up here. Now it looks pretty close to our figure 9-14 in our e-text. Let's go ahead and define the one-to-many relationships between the billing table and the treatment tables. So in the billing table field list, let's click invoice num and then drag it to the invoice num of the table treatment field list. Alright, so you see that the Edit Relationships dialog box should have opened up there. Okay, once that box is there, you'll notice that the primary table, related table, and the common field all appear at the top of the dialog box. The type of relationship one-to-many appears at the bottom. You can see that here. Now when you click the Enforce Referential Integrity box there, the two cascading options become available. If you select the Cascade Update Related Fields option, Access will change the appropriate foreign key values in the related table when you change a primary key value in the primary table. If instead we select the Cascade Deleted Records checkbox, when you delete a record in the primary table, Access will delete all records in the related table that have a matching foreign key value. So we're going to enforce referential integrity and cascade updates to related fields, but we won't cascade deletions to related records because we want to preserve the billing contact information in case it will be used again later. So let's go ahead and click Enforce Referential Integrity, and then we want to click Cascade Update Related Fields. If your screen looks just like mine, go ahead and click the Create button. And you can see that we have created our one-to-many relationship between our tables. Now we're going to go ahead and repeat those previous steps 5 through 7 if you're following along in your e-text to define the one-to-many relationships between the primary table employee table and the related table treatment table. We're going to be using the employee ID as our common field. So go ahead and let's do that now. Once again, select Cascade Update Related Fields, click Create, and our one-to-many relationship has been created. That's it for this section. Let's go on and move to the next portion of session 9.2. Now we'll define a one-to-one relationship between the patient table and the billing contact tables. Not all patients have billing contact information, so it will be important to create the relationship by dragging them from the patient table to the billing contact table to preserve our referential integrity. Here are the 3 steps we're going to complete. Now we'll go back into our database. Alright, in our patient table here, we're going to click Patient ID, then drag it to the Patient ID in the Billing Contact. And now we'll look at our Edit Relationships dialog box here. We're going to click our Enforce Referential Integrity, Cascade Update Related Fields, and before we click the Create button, notice that the relationship type has been determined by Access to be a one-to-one relationship. So let's go ahead and click the Create button. And you can see that our one-to-one relationship has been created between our billing contact table and our patient table. Let's go ahead and save our relationship changes as we've just completed our last part of this part of session 9.2 before we get into joining tables. And there we have it saved. Now in this next part we're going to talk about joining tables, and we're going to talk about 3 different types of joins. We're going to talk about inner joins, outer joins, and lastly self-joins. And an inner join is a join in which the DBMS selects records from 2 tables only when the records have the same value in the common fields that links the tables. Next we're going to talk about the outer join, which is a join in which the database management system selects all records from one table and only those records from a second table that have matching common field values. And lastly, the self-join is when a table joins itself. So those are the three joins that we're going to be discussing now. We're going to go ahead and complete some steps now in this portion of session 9.2. First, we'll look at this example of an inner join, and you can see that we have a common field of patient ID in these two tables, and that there are matching rows from them. And when we do our join, we have records that have the same value in the common field linking the tables. And you see for patient ID 22504, for Lillian Angular, 2204, Lillian Angular. We also have a billing first name and last name for 2204 of Larissa Waller. 2204 in this table, Larissa Waller. And then we have our other fields that we've put together as part of our join. That's just an example of an inner join. Here's an example of our outer join, where we have a common field between our two tables. Once again, it's patient ID. And that when we do our outer join, all the records from the patient table and only those records from the billing contact table that have matching values in the common field are present there. So let's go ahead and get into our steps for what we're going to do is to view the join type between the patient table and the visit table. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now. So what we're going to do here is we're going to right click on the join line between our patient and our visit table here. And we're going to select Edit Relationship. We're going to click the join type here. You'll see that you have the Join Properties dialog box has opened up now. Now here in our Join Properties dialog box, the first option button is selected here, which is only include rows where the join fields from both tables are equal. So this indicates that this is an inner join. Now you would click the second or third button to establish an outer join between the two tables. You'd select the second option if you wanted to select all records from the patient table and any matching records that are found from the visit table based on the patient ID as a common field between the two. And if we wanted to select the third option, if we wanted to select all the records from the visit table and any matching records from the patient table based on our patient ID as a common field. Now when you change the join type between any two tables in the relationships window, every new query based on the two tables uses the join type you selected in the Join Properties dialog box here. Existing queries, reports, or forms based on the two tables continue to use the join type that was in effect at the time you created the queries. And so we want to just continue to leave this as an inner join for all the queries based on the patient and visit tables. So go ahead and click the cancel button to close the Join Properties dialog box without making any changes here at this time, and click the cancel button to close the Edit Relationships dialog box without making changes. Now with that done, let's go ahead and close our Relationships window here. And if you get prompted, which we didn't get prompted, we would have just clicked no to not make any changes. So let's go ahead and move on to our next part, which will be to create a self-join query. As I stated before, we are going to be working with the inner join, with a self-join in this section. And if you recall, I said that a table can be joined with itself, and that's what's called a self-join. And a self-join can be either inner or an outer join. Now in this figure here, the query results here at the bottom show the record for each employee in our employee table with a value in the supervisor ID field. And the detail for each record includes information about the supervisor for that employee. The supervisor information also comes from the table employee, or the employee table, through the supervisor ID field. Now the join for the query is an inner join, so only employees with non-null supervisor ID field values appear in our query record set. So that's just a quick example of a self-join. Now the steps we're going to be performing are here so that we can create a self-join query. And you see that we will be working with the employee table. Alright, before we run the query, and let's go ahead and create that in Access. Let's go ahead and click on the Create tab here. And let's go down to our Queries group again. Click on Query Design button. Now we once again get our Show Table dialog box here. And let's just go ahead and double click our employee table. Let's go ahead and click the Close button. We will expand this so we can see that we do have all of our fields available there. Then we're going to add a second instance of this. So if you didn't close it, don't close it yet. If you did, go ahead and click Show Table. And let's double click on Employee Table one more time. So we now have two entries. Now we can close it and expand this one. There we go. And you can see when we created this second one, that Access went ahead and gave it a name as employee_1 to distinguish the two copies of our employee table. Now we're going to complete some steps to create a join between the two copies of the employee table by linking the employee ID field in our first table to the supervisor ID field in our copy table, our employee 1 field list. The supervisor ID field is a foreign key that matches the primary key field employee ID. So let's go ahead and do that now. We're going to, in the employee table field list, let's click the employee ID and drag it over to the supervisor ID in our employee table 1. You can see that Access has added a join line between the two fields. And we can verify this is an inner join query by opening the Join Properties dialog box. So again, let's go ahead and right click on our join line here, and we will click on Join Properties. You can see that the Join Properties dialog box has in fact opened. Now the first option is selected here, and you can see that this is indicating to us that this is an inner join. Because the inner join is correct, you can close the dialog box and then add the necessary fields in the design grid. So let's go ahead and click the Cancel button. And we are going to double click the following fields in order from the Employee Tables 1 field list. So let's go ahead and select the employee ID, first name, last name, and position. Now from our primary table here, our employee table, we are going to add first name and last name. Now that we've got our design grid here, we've got everything populated here, let's go ahead and run our query. It looks like we have the 12 records that we were hoping for. Now the query record set displays all employees and their supervisors with the exception of the records for Green, Jameson, and Benjamin Cameron because those records contain null supervisor ID field values. Maybe they haven't been assigned yet, or as maybe they're new employees or whatever. But remember that an inner join doesn't display records for the second table unless it contains a matching value in the common field. So in the employee 1 table up here that we had up here before, the supervisor ID field values for Connie Jameson and Benjamin Cameron or Null. So the inner join doesn't select those records in the employee table. Alright, so next, that's it for creating that. We're next going to set a caption property for 2 query fields and sort a query. So go ahead and let's look at those steps now. Now we have some matching columns in the query record set that we just created. So we're going to go ahead and rename a couple of those to distinguish them and make them easier to read. And here are the steps we're going to go through to complete those. And you see the query caption properties that we are going to set. So let's go ahead and jump back into our database, into Design View, and we'll correct these issues. Okay, let's switch to Design View. Now that we're in Design View, let's click the field box for our 6th column here. Let's go up here and click the property sheet. And we're going to go ahead and set the caption property to supervisor last name for our 6th column here. Let's go ahead and click in the box here, and let's type in supervisor last name. Then we're going to click the field box for the 5th column and set that caption property to supervisor first name. Go ahead and type that in. Then we're going to close our property sheet. Then we're going to we're going to click the right side of the employee ID sort. And change that to ascending. We're going to save our query now as query employee supervisors. And then we'll go ahead and run our query. So let's go ahead and save that. Give it our name, employee supervisors. Once you got that typed in, hit OK. Let's run. And you can see we have our 12 records, and we need to go ahead and best fit some of our columns here. And you can see that in our 5th and 6th columns, our caption IDs have been changed to those caption properties that we just created. So let's go ahead and save and close our query. Now let's take a look at indexes for our treatment table. Now, as you know, an index from your reading is a list that relates field values to the records that contain those field values, and the Access automatically creates those with tables. So let's go ahead and perform these steps now just to take a look at the index. So we'll need to open our navigation pane. And in the navigation pane, we're going to open the treatment table in Design View. Once you got that open, we're going to go in the Show Hide group, and you guessed it, we're going to click Indexes. Now the dialog box opens, and we're going to just take a look at this real quick, and we'll go ahead and reposition this. Now, because the invoice num field was selected when you opened up the indexes, table treatment dialog box, the properties in the field properties pane pertain to this field. In particular, the index property value of no for the invoice num field specifies there's no index for this field. And looking here up here, you'll see that the primary key index consists of these 2 fields, as noted by the primary key there. And down here you'll see the index properties settings for the selected primary key index. And as I just mentioned, the index property for the selected invoice num field is no. Alright, so now you've viewed an index for the treatment table. So let's go ahead and now move into, let's create an index for the city field in the patient table. Let's go ahead and close everything now. Let's close your dialog box. And then let's close the table. Alright, let's look at those steps now for creating. So to create an index for the city field in the table patient table, we're going to perform these 6 steps, sorry. And we're going to go ahead and go back into our database now, and we're going to open our patient table in Design View. So open this up, Design View. Let's go ahead and close our navigation pane now. And we're going to go to the Design tab up here. We're going to find the Show Hide group again. And you bet it again, we're going to click the Index button. Let's make sure the dialog box is positioned so we can read everything pretty good. Alright, let's make the table window the active window here by just going ahead and clicking over here. Let's click in the city, and here in the field name box to make it the most current field. Once you've got that as your active field, you'll go ahead and look down here at our index portion of our field properties. Access created an index for the patient ID field because it is the primary key. The patient ID index would have been created even if the field wasn't the primary key field name has an ID suffix. No other indexes exist for the patient table, but we're going to go ahead and create an index for the city field, allowing duplicates because the same city field value can appear in many records in the patient table. So let's click the right side of the index box here, and let's click on Yes, duplicates are okay. Now an index for the city field is created with duplicate values allowed. Alright, let's go ahead and close our dialog box. Let's save our table design here. Now let's switch back to Datasheet view. Lastly, you're going to go ahead and change the last name and first name for student first and student last to your last name and first name. Then you can save your table, close it, make a backup copy of the health database, compact it, repair the database, and then submit it in Blackboard. So good work on completing all of Tutorial 9, as this is the end of Session 9.2. Thanks everyone, and let's have a great day.